am Bernard Myers. If you're from Ohio, I'm Bernard. If you're from East Tennessee, I'm Bernard. And if you're from Cades Cove, I'm Bud. I've carried that nickname for years. My oldest brother gave me that nickname, Bud. And it finally dawned on me that my dad, our dad, had a team of mules. One of them's name was Bud. But Bud was a good mule. Old Bud the mule was easygoing, easy to get along with, very intelligent. You didn't have to yell at him. You could speak to him in a normal voice when you're plowing the garden. You come out to the end of the road, you say, "Whoa, Bud, Jew, Paul," and he listened well too. I hope that in my 87 years on this earth that I've took up a few of those traits myself. These stories are about my favorite uncle. And you'll notice I have a notebook. My memory just isn't what it once was. These stories were told to me by kinfolk and friends, and especially my older brother, Theodore, as we called him. As Sherman was the one, Theodore was the one that Sherman always called on when there was work to be done. Didn't matter if it was getting a winter supply of wood or holding corn or putting up hay or whatever. No ridicule or disrespect is intended or accepted from my Uncle Sherman. He was a man that I loved and admired when I was a youngster. Gatlinburg had Wiley OAKLEY. Cades Cove had Daniel Sherman Myers. The only difference was Uncle Sherman never got the exposure and rubbed his elbows with the rich and famous like Mr. OAKLEY did. Mr. OAKLEY, as most of you know, he was a well-known mountain guide here in Sevier County, especially up around Gatlinburg. I think he worked for one of the hotels up there, and he would take people on trips to the mountains. He took people like Henry Ford, Miss Eleanor Roosevelt, and John D. Rockefeller, just to name a few. He was well known, and he traveled widely, and his stories were enjoyed in New York and Chicago, and places like that. And there's another man that will be mentioned in the stories, John Wright Dunn. He was a local man there in Townsend. He was our postmaster for years. And he always referred to Sherman as Uncle Sherman. They were good friends. And John Wright was spin the arm too. He was good at that. Daniel Sherman Myers was born in 1888 to Peter and Margaret Shields Myers. Grandmother Maggie was Irish as they come. And of course, Peter was German. Our ancestors came out of Germany in the 17th century. Sherman quit school after the 4th grade to work on the farm. The only requirement was that you would be as long as the hoe handle it was that you're going to be using in the field loading corn. And hard work on the farm turned a tall, lankish teenager into a 6'3", 200-pound plus man. He was very strong from his upper body was built up from pulling a crosscut saw and swinging a double-bitted axe. His resume included mule skinner, logger, teamster, farmer, and sometimes moonshiner. If push comes to shove, he would make a little liquor every now and then. Now, being from East Tennessee, I may use some expressions that some of you have never heard before. So if I say something wild, you just flag me down. Sherman first married Angie Cable in 1910. She soon got tired of his shenanigans and divorced him. He was a man out of place here in East Tennessee. He shouldn't have been born out in one of the old cow towns out west. After the divorce, Uncle Sherman married Paralee Gregg, P-A-R-A-L-E-E. It's an odd name. I've never seen it before or since. She was a tiny woman, but she might have weighed 100 pounds if she soaking wet. But she could hold her own with Sherman when she got riled. I think probably more than likely she had some Native American blood flowing in them veins. Sherman said she was cute as a button and wouldn't marry me unless I agreed to have the first baby. I remember boys, they were unable to have children of their own, but I remember boys that lived with them growing up when these young fellows needed some help. Uncle Henry Myers was the older brother. He moved to Georgia, Fannin County, Georgia, in the early 1920s. And he would come back every fall to visit his mother and to visit kinfolk there in the Cove. And I'm sure that he would tell Sherman how well the corn grew along those creek banks there in Georgia. His farm resembled Cades Cove, tremendous. It was between mountains with a creek running through it. It just wasn't as big as Cades Cove. And I'm sure that he would tell Sherman how well the corn grew along those fertile creek banks and how much more profitable it was to sell by the quart than it was by the bushel. Uncle Henry had a son that owned a small airplane. Now this was back when McGee Tyson was a wide place in the road on the New Knoxville Highway. And Cousin Eddie Myers had a small plane, and he would fly down to Fannin County, Dial, Georgia, and visit with his parents. And on Sunday afternoon, if there was a couple of cases of quart mason jars sitting in the back seat, I'll leave that up to you to guess what it was. But Sherman got the itch. He got the Georgia itch, and he moved to Georgia. In the dead of winter, they loaded all of their belongings up in a wagon with a team of horses with a tarp over the top. Now, ladies, I want you to imagine, if you can, loading all of your home equipment, your cook stove, things that you can last summer, your bedding, and the chicken coop on the back, heading out in the wintertime, going to move. I just can't fathom that. And plus the chickens, they had milk out behind the truck, behind the wagon. As they were traveling late one evening, just about dusky dark, poor Paralee was about froze to death. Sherman spots a house, a big farmhouse, with a barn down the lane. He turns in, goes to the barn, takes the harness off his horses, takes them to the creek and waters them, puts them in the stable and pulls some hay out of the barn loft, feeds them, and then goes back to the house, knocks on the door and asks the guy, could you put us up for the night? The guy tells Sherman, well, sure, you're welcome. Bring your wife on in. Take your team onto the barn and take care of them. Sherman said, already have. And Sherman gladly accepts the offer. The guy says, we've got some leftovers. You're welcome to for supper. Sherman would gladly accept the offer of a half a dozen of cornbread and some buttermilk, some beans, and about a pound of butter sitting on the table. The woman of the house was amazed at Sherman's appetite. And she finally says, "Mister, that butter costs 10 cents a pound." He said, as he grabbed the last piece of cornbread and forks the last pat of butter, he said, "It's worth every cent." The next morning, at breakfast, another family member was there, and he was a dwarf, a bitty guy, long hair, long black stringy hair, and full-faced beard. And Sherman just couldn't keep from staring at him. The little guy finally got tired of Sherman's stare and said, "I'll bite you." Sherman, for once in his life, he was at a loss for words. He said, "Apparently, we'd best be on our way." They landed in Georgia, and in 1929, you know, there was a bank, the stock market failed and the banks crashed. Well, this caused Sherman's loan to become due and payable, and he couldn't pay it, and he had to come back to Cades Cove. And he moved back in to Cades Cove. He moved into the Spradlin house with grandmother Maggie. Grandfather Peter had passed away in 1916. Now, I need to tell you about the Spradlin house. It was a log house, 2-room structure with a loft where all the company could sleep. And the Spradlin house played an important part of my family's life. My 2 older brothers were born there, and my grandmother Maggie lived there. And it's located just beyond. How many are familiar with Cades Cove? Spradlin house was located just beyond the Missionary Baptist Church. You familiar with that? And you cross Taylor Branch, go up and you start up the hill. That's Cades Hill. John Cades Myers on the property. They're on the right. And up the top of the hill, you make a left and go out, and there's a huge pull-off. They used to call it the Myers Pull-Off, but they've named it to Wildlife Outpost 27 or something like that now. They really don't want you to know that any people lived over there. This overlook was overlooking my grandfather Peter Myers' farm. Someone asked Uncle Charlie Myers one time, "How much land did your dad own?" He said, "I don't know, and I don't think he did either." But he had upwards of 400 acres from one side of the cove to the other side. Now, just beyond that huge pull-off, on the right side of the road, there's enough room for 2 or 3 cars to park. And if you pull off there and follow the path up the hill, you'll wind up at the Pearl Harbor Tree. Anybody know about the Pearl Harbor Tree? Well, I might as well tell you. My dad, transplanted dad, December the 7th, 1941. When he learned that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, he went to the mountain behind our house and transplanted that little tree to our front yard, and he put a rim around it to keep the boys from running over with a lawnmower. If you go up there and look, you see trees, you can't see nothing. But back when we lived there, that's where I was born, on that hill. You could see from the pinnacle in the east to the Gregory Ball in the west. We had a panoramic view of Cades Cove from that hill. This area that I'm talking about was once known as Myers Town. And it was descendants from Baldy John Myers and my great-grandfather Daniel Hamilton Myers. My great-grandfather went into Cades Cove somewhere around 1870, and he took his 3 youngest sons. He raised the family there in Cades Cove, but he moved to Cades Cove because WILEY John was already over there, and his brother was already there. And he took with him Dan Myers Jr., Peter Myers, and Uncle Abraham Myers. He took his 3 youngest sons to Cades Cove. And WILEY John and those 3 sons are the ones that began the Myers generations in Cades Cove. I want to tell you this. The last wheat crop that my dad planted in the cove was combined and stored in the Spratton house. And I remember riding the combine with Rufus Cody driving the tractor and my brother Wayne tying sacks. Now, I need to get back to Sherman and Pearlie. The return to the Cove was uneventful until they got to the ferry on the Little Tennessee River. And the sheriff was looking for someone, and Pearlie was shivering again, but it wasn't from being so much as being cold. Sherman had 4 cases of liquor found under the wagon seat covered up his whips. But anyway, the sheriff told Sherman, said, "Get her over there to that house and let her warm up before she freezes to death." But that's not the end of the story. They finally get to Cades Cove. Sherman Myers is the only man ever to haul whiskey into Cades Cove. It always came the other way. The word got out about the haul. The men were chuckling about it. The women were trying not to talk about it. And the constable, when he found about it, he wasn't pleased at all. Dad and Uncle Charlie helped hide the goods down around the Blue Spring. And I'll tell you just in the general direction where the Blue Spring is. It's just past the missionary church, and make that little left turn looking across the cove. If you go plumb to almost the creek down through there, that's where it was a marshy area, and a huge cold spring boiled up there. And it was fenced off to keep the cattle out. And Dad and Uncle Charlie helped Sherman hide the liquor in that area. And then they turned the cattle in to trump out the wagon tracks. A few days later, Mom and Dad were sitting on the front porch. Mom was churning, one of those old-timey churners. And they saw the constable coming down the road. He was riding on a horse, and he turned in our driveway, and he started up, and it's a little bit of a loop coming back into the backside of the house. And while he was coming up the loop, Dad went into the house and got a cord of the goods and brought it and put it on in the churn, set it on the dasher, put the lid back on, and Mom, she kept churning. Well, the constable come in, and Dad bids him to come in and sit down and visit, and he did. He come in and sat down and talked a few minutes, but he got up and left. He knew that Dad wasn't a moonshine. It was, the constable, by the way, was a descendant. He was a distant cousin. He was a descendant of WILEY John Myers, so and he knew Dad wasn't a bootlegger. Now, getting back to Sherman. He once said, "I break a peavy hound just to hear it snap." Anybody know what a peavy is? It's a tool used to roll logs around. When you're logging, you need that peavy to roll logs where you can get hooked to it. Some people call them a cant hook, but a cant hook is used around a sawmill more than a peavy. And he said he'd break that peavy handle. It's a huge thing made out of oak, usually. Huge, 3 foot long. And he said he'd break that thing just to hear it snap. And he'd be swinging an axe, a double-bitted axe, Sayer axe. And every lick he swung, ha, ha. Every lick, the chips and flies, he swung that axe. This man loved to go to the back porch there at Spradlin house and holler. It sounded much like a Tarzan yell, but it would echo back from across the cove, and it would aggravate his next door neighbor, distant cousin, Peter Myers, mourning to no end. She had on occasion pointed out some of Sherman's misdeeds. For some reason, the boring girls made some not so kind remarks about Uncle Sherman's appearance. And he usually did need a shave and a haircut. But these girls, for whatever reason, made up some stories and said some bad things. He composed a limerick, nothing written down, it was all in his head. And the only line that I can remember, Corby Boring's daughters were laying out in the sun showing their hindquarters. Judy, your dad told me that years and years ago. While working at the logging camps at Tremont, he usually worked at Tremont. It required him to leave home Sunday about dinner and walk to the logging camp, getting there in time for supper and a hard week's work. On Friday and payday, he would head out back to the cove on Cades Cove, arriving home about midnight. He would find his supper in the warming closet at the old cook stove. He'd shave and bathe. He'd eat supper, shave and bathe. Slap on some of that good smelling stuff, and then on to bed. One night as he was getting into bed, Fairley laid that little hand on that clean shaved face. Said, "Young man, you better get out of here, old Whiskers will be here soon." Someone asked Sherman, as big a fellow as you are, how on earth can you take a bath in a number 3 wash tub? He said, "Well, it's a simple thing. You just step in and wash down as far as possible, and you wash up as far as possible. Then you sit down and wash possible." Sherman was wild and woolly, but he had a hard go. I stayed with him many times. After they moved out of Cades Cove, he had a place there next to Laurel Lake, there in Townsend. It was a good visit, but there was one problem. They went to bed before dark. And here I was sitting on the porch listening to the katydids. Anybody ever heard a katydid before? On a rare trip to Knoxville, Sherman ran across some men fighting roosters, game roosters. And seeing money change hands, he got the bright idea of raising these chickens to fight. But bad luck followed this adventure. He paid $1 each for a hen and a rooster. But bad luck followed when the rooster got out and went to Mary Boring's barn, where a big old Dominic rooster killed him. I mean, it was so much for that venture. Someone asked Sherman about a liquor bottle laying by the cellar door. He said, "Don't bother that. That's a 100-acre farm laying there." He also said it don't take nigh as much water to make a pot of coffee as some folks think. And he said if you tell someone a lie and they don't believe it, it's not a lie. He said if the coffee will just about float a horseshoe, it's about right. Mom told me this about Uncle Sherman when I was real small, a few months old. Sherman would drop by just about every morning and get me on he'd cross his legs and get me on his foot and bounce me up and down and sing to me. But I figured out over the years the main reason he came, he knew that Mom always had that big old coffee pot sitting on the stove about half full of coffee. And it didn't bother him if it was cold or hot. He loved his coffee. Mom was washing one time there was a spring or just off the hill from the Sprouting house. That's where we kept our butter and milk in the summer to keep it boiled. But Mom was there washing one time, and Sherman happened by, and there was some wood there. Sherman was busting that wood for the fire. And apparently he came out on the end of the porch, and it's just 30 yards or so down where the spring was, and she hollered, "Sherman!" No answer from Sherman. "Sherman!" No answer. Third time she really yelled, "If I was down there, I'd kick your blankety blank. Sherman took that old big foot and stood a block of wood up on his end. Said, "Here's you something to stand on." During all this, Mom was looking for a place to hide. She was, as they say, plumb beat out. And I'll tell you about John Wright. I mentioned him earlier. He was a character. And he was a good spinner of yarns also. John Wright had a small store there as you go into Dry Valley. Some loafers, he and some loafers are sitting there talking, and they heard Sherman coming up the road on Powder Face. That was a little gray mare. And they hollered, "Hey, Sherman, stop and tell us one." Sherman didn't slow down. He said, "Sorry, boys. Preacher John McCampbell has died, and I'm on the way to help dig his grave." And John Wright was thinking, well, if Preacher John's dead, I need to go help too. About that time, I saw Preacher John drive by in his car. Sherman, he ran out of coffee one time. Now, before I don't remember any grocery stores being in Cades Cove, but before my time, there were 3 or 4 stores in Cades Cove. But in my time, we depended on what we call the rolling store. It was a converted school bus with the seats had been taken out and groceries had been stacked in there on shelves. He ran out of coffee. And it was a few days till the rolling store would be there. So he saddled up Powder Face and crossed the mountain. He went across Reese Mountain, across Cove Mountain, across Reese Mountain, down into where John Wright's store was. And he got his coffee and headed back. It was a cold January day, sleet falling. He was shivering in the saddle as he went. And Crawford Oliver came by. He was a Cades Cove resident. He came by in a Model T Ford. Sherman flags him down. Says, "How about a ride?" Crawford says, "Sure, get in, but what about your horse?" Sherman said, "Oh, she knows the way. She'll be fine." Crawford kept looking back, looking at the little mare. And finally he said, "Sherman, she's right on her bumper. And she got her left ear laid back. What's going on?" Sherman said, "You better get over. She's fixing to pass." My dad was plowing a half-broke Crazy crazy mare with old Baldy, one of our good, gentle, big old workhorse. And they had stopped to rest, and something scared that mare, and she jumped and jerked the plow around and it hit Baldy's, one of Baldy's rear legs and broke it. And that is a death warrant for a horse. Dad didn't have the heart to shoot old Baldy, and we got Sherman to help do the chore. Sherman broke that 30-30 high power, and he walked around old Baldy 2 or 3 times before he could pull the trigger. And he looked over at my brother Theodore and said, "Your old uncle about failed that time." Dad sold this mare to cousins, Clyde and Bertie Birchfield, on Birchfield. My mom was in Birchfield. And they were distant cousins. And Dad told them about her nature, how lost she was one thing before they bought her, but they bought the horse anyway. I worked with Virgil's boy at Alcoa, and he told me that the mare had run off with a load of corn, and Virgil had fell out and broke his leg. So I reckon this mare was a bad deal all the way around. No, this is a good news. They were loading this mare on the Cades Hill just after you pass Tater Branch, start up the hill there. On the right was a barn. They had a roadblock truck backed in, getting ready to load this mare. We had tours, there was a car waiting. We had tourists back in them days, just another minute. The mare got to the back of the truck and balked. No way was she going any farther. Sherman got a piece of rope and put around her head, around her neck. And he put both feet on the edge of the front edge of that truck and was pulling all night on that rope when that mare lunged into the truck. First place it hit was Sherman at the back of his head in the middle of that Pipe Rock Road. The guy in the car was trying to keep from laughing. And between gasps for breath, he said, "Mister, you hurt?" Sherman said, "Hurt? Hell, I'm killed." He's picking gravel out of his scalp. The guy erupted in laughter, and they said he was still laughing when they talked out at the top of the Cades Hill. One cold winter night, Sherman heard something in his chickens. He heard a dog barking and the chickens are squawking. He jumped out of the bed, grabbed his hat, pulled his boots on. And as he went out the front door, he grabbed that 12 gauge off from over the door. Outside, now picture this. Outside, dressed only in his hat, and his boots and his underwear, the long house, the kind with the flap in the back. He went to where the chickens were, and he had his finger on both triggers, looking. About that time, Big Red, the dog, found out that Sherman's flap wasn't buttoned. He cold-nosed the Sherman because he could pull both triggers at the same time. This sent 2 loads of buckshot up into the tree, wiping out 2 hens and the bobcat that was harassing the chickens. Mission accomplished. But plus, there was 2 hens for the cook pot and a good bobcat pelt. Now, old Red, he was the champion. Sherman had to do was put a drying board on the front porch. And these were boards that the pelts were put on to dry and stretch. And all Sherman had to do was put a board on the front porch, and Big Red would go find a coon and fix. This worked well enough until Farley left her Army board on the front porch one day. As far as I know, old Red's still over there coursing in the hills and hollers. If you were to see him, you'd toss him a chicken bone or something, he'd bound to be hungry. One of Sherman's business partners thought that he was consuming too much of their product. This brought on a heated debate. And when the argument was over, Sherman turned and was walking away. And the man called his name, and as Sherman turned, the guy hit him in the face with a rock held in his hand. Flattened poor Sherman's nose even more. It was already flat from all the pots that had been in. But it flattened his nose even more. Sherman said later, "I've looked at so-and-so over the sights of my 30-30 several times, and I just haven't had the heart to pull the trigger." And some of you would know the family's name if I called it. Oh, this is good in here. One night Sherman was trying to slip in without waking Paraday. Now back in the day, it was a custom to have at least 2 beds in the living room next to the fire. Anyway, Sherman was trying to slip in, and he thought he had it made till he was backing up to the hearth to warm up, and he stepped on the cat's tail. Of course, this brought up huge protests from the cat, and Paraday raised up in the bed. "What's going on? I've never heard such a racket in my life. What's going on? What time is it anyway?" Sherman said, "Oh, I guess it's about 9 o'clock. The old clock started to bong, and it didn't quit bonging until it bonged 12 times. Barely gives Sherman a lecture about being out late and lying about it. Sherman breaks into tears. Barely said, "What's wrong with you now?" Sherman said, "Here we've been married all these years, and you'll believe an old wore-out clock before you'll believe me." During a rare drought, Cades Cove was seldom do you have a drought in Cades Cove. The elevation is just a little bit higher than WILEY Cove, and it was an ideal place to raise all kinds of fruit. Apples thrived there. My dad had an orchard behind the house, and I guess he had, I don't know, 7 or 8 different kinds of apples in it. But during a rare time of a drought, Sherman felt impressed to pray for rain. And he said, "Lord, just a quarter's worth, just a quarter." Well, that night it come a cloud bust, and it washed his bean patch along and tear brains away. He said, "If I'd have noticed it's cheap, I'd just ask for a nickel's worth." Now this is a good one here. Back when the barter system was in effect, that's back when you would trade eggs at the store for your groceries. Mom did it many times. Sherman took a bunch of eggs to John Wright's store. Then later, John Wright discovered some of the eggs were bad. And when he saw Sherman, he called Sherman's landowner. "Hey, some of them eggs were bad." Sherman said, "It's a fair trade. Did that bologna was so bad, when I fed it to my dog, he'd quit eating and lick his behind to get the taste out of his mouth." Sherman was he was relaxing one time at John Wright's store with the RC Cola and a rolling sandwich. The man came in and asked for a half a piece of stovepipe. Half a piece of stovepipe. And Sherman thought this was kind of odd, you know, half a piece of stovepipe. But he said, "No, just wait a minute, I'll go get John Wright." He found John Wright in the back of the store and said, "There's an idiot out there that's wanting a half a piece of stovepipe." And about that time he realized the guy had fallen in. And he said, "This gentleman wants the other half." You know, the Bible says that a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. And I fully believe that. And if I can give you a chuckle or a laugh here today, then I've accomplished what I've come for. I don't think that Sherman ever saw a football game. If he did, I don't know when it would have been. But he gave my brother Wayne some good advice. He said, "Make that fella on the other side dread to see you coming." That's about what it boils down to. Sherman rode powder face to a local grocery store. And as usual, there were 3 or 4 rovers sitting there on the bench. It was the gas pump was one of the old time ones with the glass hole on top, and you had to pump it to get the gas up. But as the guy jumped up and grabbed that hose, "How much do you need?" Sherman jerked that little mare, and she wheeled her butt around and pinned that guy to the gas pump. Sherman said, "Little gas, please." I remember going to the Potato Branch to watch Uncle Sherman try out a new Alice Chalmer tractor. I think it was a B, steel wheel, no hydraulics, no electrical system, hand crank. It had a long spring-loaded lever to raise and lower the plow. And no one but Sherman would have had the strength to raise the plow out of the ground anyway. But he was bouncing around on that tractor, and it was a comical sight to see. That's probably the first time he ever tried to drive a vehicle. He was like my dad. He was more at home with a team of horses. Dad wasn't impressed at all with the tractor. He and Uncle Charlie owned what was it, International? McCormick Deer. They had bought a McCormick Deer years and years before. But Dad wouldn't drive a tractor. He wouldn't drive a car. He told Mom, "If I get under the steering wheel, my knees start bumping together." But he was like Sherman. He was going home with a team of horses. Sherman said one time that he apparently had moved so many times that if he got close to the house with a team of horses and the wagon, that the chickens would go get in the coop. After moving to Laurel Lake, he cleared that place with his brute strength and stubbornness and his little mare. And he had rented from pastor to a neighbor, Clyde Sullivan, and Clyde told this story. It tickled Clyde. They had delivered the cows, and he and Sherman were standing looking at those long valleys, that lush grass growing. It's where the golf course is now. Clyde said, "They've sure got plenty of room." Sherman said they can go from hell to the shining rock. Well, now this story was told to me by my father-in-law, Clark Adams, years and years after it happened. Clark was there in Cades Cove, in the CC. And Sherman, the early riser, always drunk a lot of strong, hot, black coffee. And sometimes it would act as a laxative. And one morning, as he was hurrying to the outhouse, a load of the CC guys were coming by in a truck. And they thought it was hilarious to see this big guy run to the toilet. And they hollered, "Hurry, you ain't gonna make it." Next morning, Sherman was standing out at the edge of the road with a shotgun cradled in his arm. He said, "You so-and-so's say good morning, Mr. Myers, or hello, Sherman. Don't you ever make fun of me anymore." And they didn't. Now, knowing these two fellows, my father-in-law, Cades and Sherman, more than likely, now I can't say this is a fact, but more than likely they got acquainted over a jug of moonshine. Sherman took great pride in his hunting dogs, especially his bear dogs. A lot of them old-timers preferred bear meat over beef or pork. And he had traded for 3 pups, Poker Joe, Rock, and Growler. On a rest break, they told Sherman, "Old Rick and whoop them pups, them pups is almost grown." They turned them out one at a time, and old Rick whooped them. Well, later, a few months later, Sherman said, "I don't believe old Rick can handle them dogs now. They've grown up." So he says, "Turn them out." They turned them out one at a time, and old Rick prevailed again. Rick was the ugliest dog that you ever saw. Little short legs, brown, blotchy black spots on him, weighed about 40 pounds. They would clip his hair in the summer, but he'd leave a wisp on the end of his tail. He looked like a small lion. That dog hated snakes, and he would kill any kind. It didn't matter if it was a rattlesnake, a black snake, or whatever. Old Rick would kill it. When Thee got back home out of the army, he was in India, and my other brother Cleve was in the Philippine Islands. But when Thee got home, old Rick was old, deaf, couldn't see good. Thee jumped up on the porch and stomped his feet, hollered, "Ricky!" That old dog stood up, wagged his tail. He remembered the master's voice. In the summer of 1945, after Dad's death in April, my brother Wayne, we had moved out of Cades Cove in 1945. But my dad went back over there to take care of the cattle and stuff. And he was out at John Tipton's plowing his garden, and he had a heart attack and died out there. But that summer, my brother Wayne was 16 years old, and he had, back in April when Dad had died, he actually borrowed a car from our neighbor and went to Superior and made the funeral arrangements for my dad. He was 16 years old. Sherman Wayne was facing this dilemma with all that hay to put up. Well, here comes Sherman with Tommy Birchfield, and they worked a week putting that hay in the barn. Back in them days, you put it in loose, you didn't have no baler. All I could do was carry water. I was 8 years old. And after a week's work, and with a whole lot of persuasion, Mom finally gets Tommy to take some money. She pays him. Sherman absolutely refused any money. Mom goes in the smokehouse and comes out with a whole piece of side meat, bacon, cured bacon, puts it in a sack and gives it to Sherman. Big tears run down his face. He said, "Thank you, Bowie. Thank you." Couldn't have been anything better. Another good thing about the hay, it was put up loose, as I mentioned. It was hauled in on a wagon, and there was a fork put a system in the barn, and at the top of the barn, bring a fork out and set it in the hay, pulled it up, and it picked the hay up and went into the barn. Wayne would be on, Brother Wayne would be on the wagon, setting the hook. Sherman would be in the barn, putting it where he wanted it. And Tommy would be pulling off the mule tank. When Wayne got the fork set, Sherman would holler at the top of his voice, "Holler, Tommy, holler, holler, God bless you." Now this one caps the cake. This is the icing on the cake. And Sherman would tell this whopper without a trace of a smile. Once while he was cutting hay, he cut the rear legs off of one of his prized broodsides. And he pulls her over to the side thinking that she was done for. Well, in a few days he noticed she was pulling herself around with her front legs. And he builds a sulky with 2 wheels and 2 poles up to her sides, fastened to her body with leather straps. Well, it come time to take the cattle and hogs to the mountain, fattening up on the chestnut crop. He was kind of undecided, but he finally went ahead and took the sow to the mountain. And it came time to go get him. He went back to the mountain and he called and called, thinking a bear had devoured her. Finally, she showed up, still on the wheels, still on the sulky, and she had 10 pigs following her. And they were on wheels too. Oh, that about does Uncle Sherman. Someone might, if we got a minute or two now, we might, if someone might have a question, about the Cove, I'd be welcome to.
When they left Cades Cove to go to Georgia, you know which route they took out of Cades Cove?
They went out Parsons Branch. I've heard Uncle Charlie tell about herding cattle through that area, throughout Parsons Branch, through the mountains into North Carolina. And he did it with a horse and 2 dogs.
Just a couple of comments. I had a great-grandmother on my mother's side. Her name was Pearlie.
Really?
Yeah. So I hadn't heard of her. And my dad moved from Gilmer County, which is next to Fannin County, into Knox County. So he came the opposite direction.
How about that? Strange world.
Yeah.
Are any of the cabins that No, they're all gone?
No, they tore our house down within 10 days after we moved. Dad built that house in 1926 along with Uncle Charlie. Uncle Charlie helped me do it. Well, I thank you for your kind attention.